Hi, everybody. I'm Brittany Lewis, a breaking news reporter here at Forbes. Joining me once again is political commentator Chris Cillizza. Chris, thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me. Happy 2026. I don't think I've been on.
Happy 2026. I don't think you've been on either, but there have been so many news cycles that have happened that are all kind of culminating on the world stage right now as the 2026 World Economic Forum is underway in Davos. The main topics of conversation are Trump, tariffs, Greenland, and the president took the stage today. What did you make of his remarks? He had this wide-ranging conversation, this wide-ranging address, lasted over an hour. What are your takeaways?
So, you know what's interesting, Brittany, is before he left for Davos on Tuesday night, he gave a speech. It was billed as a press conference. It was basically a speech to White House reporters in the White House press briefing room. And it was remarkably similar to the speech he gave in Davos. I mean, there was a little bit of, freelancing here and there, but even his asides were similar. I don't know that this was a speech for Davos in particular as much as it was a speech for Donald Trump to take a victory lap on what he's done in year one of the second term of his presidency. I wrote something about it and I said, give the guy credit. He doesn't change his message based on the audience he's speaking to. I mean, he kind of just went right at him. He said, you guys are failing. And the way that you can turn things around is by copying what we've done. He talked about Greenland and how basically the U.S. is owed it for everything they did for NATO without getting much in return. The biggest thing in the speech, the biggest news in the speech was he said that the U.S. would not use military force when it came to Greenland, which I would guess probably was greeted with some relief, although also some trepidation because Trump says lots of things, but some relief by the assembled, at least political leaders there.
And it's interesting because I listened to both in full. I listened to his press conference from yesterday as well as his entire remarks at Davos. And some of the lines I had written out and they were almost verbatim the same. So I was like, wait a second, was that from X or Y? But when you're listening to what he's saying, when he's talking about Greenland, he's talking for 20 minutes, kind of going through his greatest hits. Then he asks the audience, should I talk about Greenland? He says something to that effect.
Yep.
How do you think that was received, and do you think he's going to back down from this idea that the United States should acquire Greenland?
Well, there's some reporting that suggests a deal may be in the works about this that would not give the United States all of Greenland, but would give some. So, I mean, I don't know. My guess always, my operating assumption always, Brittany, is that all of this bluster was just Trump doing the whole art of the deal thing, right? Like, take up the maximalist position. We have to have all of it. They either need to sell it to us or we're taking it by force and then negotiate backward from there. I think this is a lot about his legacy, and how he views it. He wants to leave a mark. It's why he's putting his name on everything from the Kennedy Center to the soon to be built White House ballroom. He wants to leave a legacy and leave a mark. I think this is part and parcel of that. How is it received in the room? They applauded him when he finished speaking, but it was more polite applause than anything else. I don't think anybody really loves being lectured about what I'm doing great and you're doing wrong. At the same time, Donald Trump understands and is willing to remind people of, in a way past presidents haven't been willing to do, that the U.S. is the most powerful military in the world, largest economy in the world, and we can kind of do what we want. Most presidents just let that be an unstated reality that these countries needed to deal with, particularly Western Europe. No, Donald Trump doesn't do that.
President Trump also, if you could remember a time in American history, politics did stop at the water's edge. Obviously, that really hasn't been a policy in the past decade. And President Trump wasted no time in just ripping President Biden. He called him the auto pen president, said he could be the worst president in U.S. history. He said just over a year ago, under the radical left Democrats, we were a dead country. Now we're the hottest country. He talked about a 2020 rigged election. That's what he called it. He ripped the press. He really went on. What did you make of that?
He only has one speech. Do you know what I mean? Like he really does. Like I go through every one of his speeches. I watch them and I go through the transcript. And there is so much similarity, whether he's speaking to a House Republicans fundraising dinner or Davos. I mean, it's the same basic pieces, right? I always compare him to like the Eagles or a band that's past their prime but still tours and can make money. They're going to play Hotel California because that's the song everybody knows. You know, like he is sort of like that, Brittany, and he doesn't really tailor that message. I mean, again, he went for 104 minutes on Tuesday. This speech today, I mean, I didn't time it. It had to be over more than an hour. You know, and so it's just, I think he kind of has one setting and one speech. He might vary it a little bit, but the main themes are going to be, we've been getting ripped off by other countries. The people who were in this job before me were idiots. And I'm getting everything right, and all the predictions by the so-called experts are wrong. Like, there's like very broad thematic pillars that he's always going to hit.
To that point, the Minnesota fraud story is a big story nationally. I mean, internationally, I'm not sure that the people at Davos would really care about that, but he continued on that way. Anyway, I was curious because I was watching it, and when I was writing down all the instances of when he was ripping people domestically, whether it be former presidents, Democrats, and the like. I mean, President Trump has built himself as a president who puts America first, but if you go on the global stage and you're ripping the institutions and people of your country, I mean, how do you think he can say, hey, I'm putting America first in this instance?
Well, because it's not rational, right? I mean, his speeches and his messaging, if you try to break it down on a like, well, he said this, you know, and now he's saying that, it doesn't really work, right? I mean, in theory, if America is the best country in the world, running it down, even a former president or its media or how it was going to be a dead country. I mean, he basically says it was going to be Venezuela on steroids if I hadn't won. I don't think that supports kind of the America is great. At the same time, you know, Donald Trump believes himself to be a unique figure in history, someone who alone can fix the problems that face America. So those two things don't totally work. Like, is America great because it's America, or is it great because Donald Trump is the president? My guess would be he would answer, if he was being honest, it's great because Donald Trump is the president, which, you know, I think if you think at all about it for more than 5 minutes, you're like, well, does that then mean America isn't great? It's dependent on a leader. So I think if you think too hard or stare too much at this Donald Trump rhetoric, you find yourself being like, this makes no sense. And I think some of the stuff in the speech today, that's where I found myself.
Before Davos, President Trump threatened 8 NATO countries with tariffs over Greenland. And that, until today, was the big topic of conversation on the stage at Davos. Some European leaders were saying the United States is still an ally, it's still a friend. Others saying the United States isn't really behaving like an ally. President Trump went on stage today. He was ripping NATO, saying we've paid for NATO, they haven't done anything for us. He threatened our allies by saying we want a piece of ice, meaning Greenland, for world protection, and they won't give it. We've never asked for anything else. He went on to say, issue this ultimatum. They have a choice. You can either say yes and we will be very appreciative, or you can say no and we will remember. But at Davos, California Governor Gavin Newsom, he said that America's allies and business leaders need to understand this. There's no diplomacy with Donald Trump. Get off your knees and grow a spine. And he also added that world leaders rolling over to Trump is embarrassing. What do you make of Newsom there?
Well, Newsom's running for president in 2028. I don't think there's any secret about that. I mean, he hasn't officially announced, but he's running. He has benefited greatly over the last year in terms of the opinion Democrats hold of him by being the loudest, most high-profile, most public critic of Donald Trump. So Newsom is doing what he's always done that succeeded. That said, I don't know that he's wrong. I mean, I think there is something to be said. At some point, if you just keep giving Donald Trump a little bit here and a little bit there, if past his prologue, he's going to keep asking for bigger things. That's just who he is. Right now, it's give me Greenland because you kind of owe it to me. I wonder I was intrigued by what Mark Carney, the Canadian Prime Minister, had to say. That he spoke on Tuesday at Davos. I was interested in what Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, what Emmanuel Macron, the President of France, said. They all took a little bit of a harder line on Trump and these demands, effectively saying, like, look, we've seen this movie. Like, at some point, we, the allied Western European powers, are going to have to stand up and say, like, no, like, we're not going down this road again. Giving a speech is one thing, right? Mark Carney got a lot of credit for the speech he gave. But rubber meets road. Is Western Europe, and I'll put Canada in that broad group, are they going to be willing to stand up against Donald Trump as his asks get increasingly large? That, to me, Gavin Newsom's going to do what Gavin Newsom does. It's good politics for him. I wonder, in terms of the geopolitical situation, what does Western Europe do? Can they do something together? Do they split apart? Obviously, that would benefit Donald Trump. I don't know. I do know, though, that, Brittany, I don't think Donald Trump believes terribly strongly in the post-World War II kind of alliance and global order, United Nations, NATO, etc. I don't think he would mind that being blown up, figuratively, not literally. And so I think you kind of have to reckon with that if you're a leader of one of these Western European nations.
I think President Trump, too, going back to your Mark Carney speech, he definitely watched that, or at least got the highlight reel, because he called out Mark Carney by name.
Yep.
And he said that Canada should be grateful. Canada lives because of the United States. And I know that while tariffs were a big conversation with European leaders, with Canada, after President Trump's speech, he said he had a meeting with NATO's Secretary General. He told CNBC, we have a concept of a deal. So these tariffs, these February 1st tariffs on these 8 NATO countries, they're off the table as of now.
Yep.
And he was a little light on the details when it came to this deal. He said it was complex. He said it has to do with Greenland and security. He said it was a forever deal. I mean, do you think that this is a deal where the United States acquires Greenland, or do you think that this is an off-ramp, so we're done with the Greenland conversation?
The latter. At least for the near term. I don't know that we're done with the Greenland conversation overall, because I will remind people, this is not the first time Donald Trump has become fixated on Greenland and acquiring it or taking it. In his first term in 2019, right before COVID hit, he threw the idea out. I think a lot of people just thought it was a joke, but he's clearly not. This is not just something he happened upon. He read something. And I don't know that we've heard the last of it. I do not think, however, that this is a deal for the United States to acquire Greenland. I think this is an attempt to throw him some sort of off-ramp, some sort of bone where he can declare victory and we move on. That is how the European leaders have dealt with him to date. Give him something that he'll allow him to say he won, but don't give him anywhere near what he wants and just assume he moves on, gets distracted, moves on to something else. We'll see. I'd be stunned if, in the space of 48 hours, Denmark and Greenland agreed to be sold, to sell Greenland to the United States. I'd be stunned if that was the case.
If you can believe it, we just yesterday passed President Trump's first year in his second term. And I mean, his polling right now is not great, right? According to a CNN poll, he has a 39% approval rating, and a few polls have him hanging out in that neighborhood. And when you're thinking about the biggest stories of the past couple of months, you're thinking boat strikes, that moves on to Epstein files, that moves on to Venezuela and Maduro, that moves on to Greenland. I mean, what specifically are you looking out for next?
I predict more unpredictability. I mean, that's the thing. It's so hard to know where he goes, right? It's like, I'll throw a few others. The Minneapolis shooting, the ICE more broadly, troops in Minnesota and Maine, the White House ballroom. There's so many things. He's supposed to focus more on domestic policy. He's going to Iowa later this week to give a speech. He does so many things that it's hard for me to know what jumps out. I mean, I do think my eye is on the legacy building. If I'm looking for something that's not just the day-to-day, oh, he said this, oh, he put this on Truth Social, legacy building. What is he trying to do? He's very focused on it. He wants to end the Russia-Ukraine war. He wants to win the Nobel Peace Prize. He wants to put his name on things. He wants to acquire a large piece of land. These are all things aimed at legacy building. He believes himself to be a great man of history. He wants to be remembered as a consequential president. I would argue, whether you like him or hate him, you have to admit he is a consequential president, but he's going to continue to take big swings. That's been a defining factor of both of his terms, certainly his second term. And the other thing I would say for people to watch, we haven't talked much about it, but watch the Supreme Court. From tariffs to birthright citizenship to independent, quasi-independent agencies and whether he can fire them. There's a huge, I think there's between 7 and 10 cases the court is going to rule on between now and July 1st-ish that directly impact Donald Trump's presidency and will impact his legacy. So that's the other, we don't talk about it every day, but that's the other wild card I'm sort of keeping an eye on. How is the court going to frame what Donald Trump can do, what he can't do, and how he builds his legacy, how people remember him?
And I think it's just incredible just how fast the news cycle switches, right? I named 5 stories. You named 10 stories. We're probably missing 20 stories in between that time. And so when you're looking at that, it almost feels like whack-a-mole, personally, as a reporter, trying to cover everything. And I feel like if you're just an average American trying to just intake news and see the news of the day, that probably feels overwhelming and feels like whack-a-mole too, trying to see everything. And it moves so fast. You talk about Epstein one day, that moves on to something else, as you and I have talked about. But because of the fast nature of the way things move, do you think that's going to help or hurt Republicans in the midterms?
I think it probably hurts them in that the more that Donald Trump is talking about Greenland, for example, the less he is talking about affordability, the less he's talking about lowering housing prices, the less he's talking about lowering the prices of everyday goods. And in a midterm election, this will be a referendum on how Donald Trump, and to a lesser extent, the Republican Party in the Senate and the House, have governed. Donald Trump was elected for a lot of reasons, but I would argue the main one was people elected him because they trusted him to fix the economy and make things more affordable, make them more money. If he is judged to have taken his eye off the ball, and right now every poll that you find will tell you that, a majority of the people think he's too focused on things that they don't care about, they will lose. I think lots of Republican leaders in the Senate and the House know that fact. The problem is Trump is fundamentally chaotic and unpredictable. And so, yeah, he could give a speech on the economy one day, but the next day he could be off talking about NATO or Greenland or whatever, right? The ballroom. And I think that's the problem, is that unless and until they can convince, and by they I mean Trump, Republicans in the House, Republicans in the Senate, unless and until they can convince voters that they are worthy stewards of the economy, that the policies they have put in place, whether it's the one big beautiful bill, no tax on tips, whatever it is, have made things more affordable in your everyday lived life, they're in trouble. And they have not made that case. I mean, look, we're talking about Greenland, right? They have not made that case. And I would be worried if I was a Republican elected official in a swing state or a swing district that Donald Trump may never make that case.
Well, I think that means we certainly have a lot to talk about, probably things we don't even think that we're going to be talking about. We will be talking about soon.
100%.
But I hope we can have many more conversations in 2026. Chris Cillizza, it's always a pleasure. Thanks for joining me.
Oh, thank you, my friend. Thanks for having me. Take care.